Lifting your F-150 is the ultimate in off-road performance, so we chose to install a Zone 6-inch lift kit on our 2015 F-150. This is a longer install, and air tools and a car lift are pretty much necessary to complete this task. After removing the wheels, you can start disassembling the front suspension by removing all of the brake lines from the knuckle. Under the truck, we will remove both splash guards to gain access to the front differential.
Jack it up.
In the front diff, unplug the steering rack connections, more for safety reasons than anything else. Continuing disassembly with the front suspension, the front coilovers can be unbolted from the bottom as well as the outer tie rod. Unbolt the front axle nut and the sway bar end links next. Onto the front brakes, remove the two caliper bolts and slide the caliper from the rotor, then take the rotor off the hub. The metal dust shield can be unbolted as well as the ABS sensor located in the knuckle. Preparing to remove the stock knuckles, loosen the lower and upper nuts. It could take a few hits with a hammer to break the knuckle loose from the control arm. After removing the knuckle, remove the bolts for the lower control arm and take it off the truck as well.
Jack it up.
Next, the coilovers can be removed by unscrewing the top three nuts in the strut tower. We decided to throw our stock upper control arms back in the truck for the time being, so we did that at this point in the install. Unbolting the 4 bolts in the lower cross member will let you remove it from the frame. The sway bar bushings are next, then drop the sway bar from the truck. In order to remove the front differential, unbolt the front drive shaft and move it aside. Then prop up the differential using 2 jack stands. The differential bolts to the frame at 3 mounting points. Unbolt it from the frame and lower it from the vehicle. An extra set of hands will come in handy. Zone gives you the correct specifications for trimming the frame of the truck in order to mount the new drop brackets. Mark the frame, and then continue to cutting the required pieces and also drilling the required holes. Add the control arm drop brackets and the differential drop brackets to the frame along with the differential vent tube. With the assistance from a friend or two, lift the differential and attach it to the drop brackets. Then reconnect the vent tube. Next, attach the sway bar drop brackets to the frame. It is also worth saying that we left the hardware loosely tightened until the end. We also plugged back in the steering rack connections. The differential skid plate will go on next, followed by the front drive shaft spacer. With the cam lobes attached to the bolts, replace the lower control arms in the drop brackets at this time. The sway bar can also be replaced into its new brackets. Start to transfer the hub from the old knuckle over to the new lifted knuckle. The hub and bearing assembly bolts up perfectly to the new zone lifted knuckle. The supplied spacers can be bolted to the stock coilover assembly, and then bolt it back into the strut tower and lower control arm. With some help, bolt the new knuckle to the lower and upper control arm. You may need a pry bar to get enough leverage. Tighten these nuts down completely. Now you are able to torque down all of the bolts on the front knuckle assembly and reconnect all of the brake accessories. Replace the sway bar to the end links and tighten the strut spacer to the top of the strut tower. The brake line bracket can also be installed at this time. After the rotor and caliper are back on, the front end is just about put together. On the LCA brackets, attach the cam lobes for the best alignment to your eye. After your alignment is set, torque down the bracket bolts and the front end is completed. You will need to get a professional alignment as soon as possible after completing the installation. Moving on to the rear, support the rear end with 2 jack stands. Adjusting these later will help the alignment of the rear block in the near future. Unbolt the brake line bracket to give slack when installing the rear block. Then remove the rear shocks. 4 bolts will remove the plate that holds the stock blocks. Remove the plate and the U-bolts, then lower the jack to pull out the stock block. Using a C-clamp, hold the rear leaf pack together and remove the 2 bolts in the leaf. Attach the zone brackets and bolts and torque them down. Now install the new zone block and the newer, longer U-bolts. Tighten down the 4 corners of the plate evenly to finish installing the block. Now with the brake line bracket, reinstall it with the new drop bracket. You can assemble the rear shock bushings and apply a little grease to prevent noise, then reinstall them in the truck. Please double check all of the hardware installed and re-torque it all to spec to ensure a clean install. This is a major suspension upgrade and needs to be installed correctly. Replace the wheels on the truck to finish up your lift kit and enjoy the new look of your F-150.